True peace, everybody. My name is Noot, and this is Heritage Hip Hop.
Peace, everybody. Welcome back to Heritage Hip Hop. And if you know anything about me, you know that knowledge is the key, not only to understanding, but knowledge is the key to wisdom as well. And for a man to be complete, he has to be learned as well as experienced. And I found a person who's very learned and knowledgeable, and I wanted to bring him on Black Men is Dope to teach us something. Introduce yourself to everybody.
All right, my name is Noot. All right, a lot of people may not understand what my name means. A Noot is basically represents a brain. The word Bunu represents bone marrow for the African race. So what I figured out through research and through understanding is that we as African people collectively represent a particular body function. And through that and through understanding constellations and astronomy, we can all understand why we represent a particular function in the body.
That's deep, because whenever you study a civilization, a faith, or a society, coming together as a body is always the major point of strength. Correct. Even in church, you have the body of Christ. When you have Muslims, you have arm, leg, arm, head, which is a body function. When you study the Greeks, which stole their knowledge from the Egyptians, they studied the endocrine systems, which was body systems, and how they can mimic it in war strategy and in taking over the world. So the body is a structure that's mental, physical, and spiritual all at the same time.
That's a fact.
Why did you go down that path, and what is the goal that you want to get from going down that path?
All right. I went down that path because, number one, I understood how detrimental religion was as far as our race is concerned. And the reason why it's detrimental to our race is because it took us out of a reasonable or reasoning on a high level and put us in a level where we just believe, right? We aren't in a space where we're using proper scientific methods to figure out all our problems figure out all our solutions to our problems. So this is a problem within our race. And like you said, it's a body. We have to understand we are in a body. And the way that they scattered us when they took us from Africa, and our slavery was longer than 400 years. A lot of people don't understand is the sub-Saharan slave trade was taking place. It wasn't as harsh as the transatlantic slave trade, but the sub-Saharan slave trade lasted 1,400 years. And then after that, another 400 years of the transatlantic slave trade. And what that did was disenfranchise the body. A body can never function with a missing part or a missing entity. If you're missing a liver, it's not going to function. If you're missing the lungs, it's not going to function. If you're missing the heart, it's not going to function. So this is why when I first introduced myself, I told you that I represented the bone marrow. Now, what is the function of bone marrow? The function of bone marrow is to make blood cells, red, white, and platelets as well. And they're also very creative. And if you look at a lot of the things that I've created, you will see that I'm a very creative person within my right. And the reason why I represent the bone marrow is because the Aries constellation represents bone marrow. If you go into the main star in Aries, which I believe is Hamal, Hamal is actually weak in its calcium lines, which means that it's burning more calcium than it's actually supposed to, which means that it exhausted that calcium and it's actually looking to replenish the calcium. So I study a lot of astronomy, not in the aspect of horoscopes and things of that nature, but I study the movement and the activities of the stars in order to understand, because our ancestors understood as above, so below, but we have to take it further as black people now and take a staple for ourselves. So it's as above, so below, so inner, because it's also inside of you as well.
Let's bring the conversation down a little bit, because we have to meet people at their level.
I apologize.
And this is very important, because I had a debate last night, and the guy was telling me basically how I said, as people, we don't have the understanding of right and wrong. I think our morals are so clouded that right and wrong has become an opinion when it's really a fact.
Correct.
And I had a conversation where I said children have the right to learn.
That's right.
And that's what all I said. And the gentleman went on and said, but nah, what if I wanted to teach sex education? I was like, that's not a right. That goes into good or bad. I said a right. Rights are moral. So when you're going on constellations and stuff, it's people who don't even look at the stars. So let's bring the understanding down big.
Okay.
So we can,
I got you.
We can get people to see what's going on.
Not a problem.
This is just some conscious debate, because I don't believe in conscious debate.
Okay.
I think most of them full of shit anyway.
I agree.
So let's scale back a little bit.
Okay.
Not our constellations, back to the body.
Let's go to the body.
And you actually talked about religion.
Correct.
And in my personal studies of religion, that's going back to what you talked about. Religion is the sociological phenomenon
and
that put business. So you already know what I'm talking. It put business and God together and destroyed faith.
That's right.
How has religion destroyed the mind, in your opinion, and how did that affect the breakdown of a social structure that we have now?
All right. So, like I told you earlier, religion took away our ability to reason, right? And the ability to reason means the ability to make intelligent decisions. So when you take away the ability to make intelligent decisions, now you don't have the ability to spend your money in the correct manner. Because the ability to make decisions and the ability to use your economic power in order to bring you up as a race is like, let me give you an example. For instance, when you look at some of these mega churches, right? A lot of people pour money into it. The pastor is the richest person there, right? But the people are suffering, thinking that they can give money to the church and think that they can get something back. That's a high-powered belief in which you're thinking you're going to get something back, but you never get anything in return.
Let's stop right there, because we're going to go into understanding now. Personally speaking, I believe people do that because they don't understand their faith. Do you agree?
I agree.
I use the Bible for a lot of my quotes, because that's what the main basis of my belief is since little. That's what I was raised in. And in the Bible it says, don't elect a leader that is not of your people, because they'll lead you astray, and they'll deal with their own people first and leave your desires behind. When you talk about mega churches, the only person that comes to mind to me is Joel Osteen. And Joel Osteen to me is like,
makes like $50 million a year, which is crazy.
I think he makes more than that, because he's more dangerous than the actual mega church preacher.
I agree.
Because I actually seen him on TV say that he doesn't believe Christ is the way, but that's what his religion says. That people give him money. I can go to Islam, I can go to Buddhism, I can go to Taoism. We could study the ISIS papers and all that. We could do all that.
We're not the head of none of those things.
Actually, we are. And the sad part is...
Where?
Actually, we are. And the sad part is, when the representation changes, that's where the mind gets cloudy. For instance, and I'm going to end this part on this. Why do we have a white Jesus? Why do we have a white Dharma? Why do we have people who believe that white is right and dark is devil? What do you think?
Before you mentioned that you made a point that we are not I guess you were in a disagreement that we're not the head of these religions. Reason why we're not the head of those religions, in my point of view, is because we don't benefit the most. We have to understand that we spiritually have to be inclined to that particular religion. If you go to Christianity, the head of that religion is the Caucasian, the Vatican. They make billions of dollars following that faith. You go to Islam, it's the Arab or the Phoenician race, and they benefit the most off the oil and things like that in their faith. If you go to Taoism and Buddhism and things of that nature, they are the head of those things and they benefit the most financially for that. Black people are the underlings of every one of those religions, and the reason being also is because you have a white Jesus, because they're the ones who are the forefront of that religion. They've taken from African spirituality, twisted it in a way for themselves in order for it to work against us. But we have to understand is that spirituality is very, very deep. Now, I did some research the other day. Spirituality deals with gases. I know a lot of people will be like, well, what do you mean by it deals with gases? It definitely deals with gases because, for instance, when America dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, right? Between 1945 and 1963, they noticed something very peculiar. They noticed that when they dropped the bomb, these neurons were lingering around in that neighborhood. And if you know anything about neurons fluctuate towards blood, right? So a lot of people are like, well, why do they do blood sacrifices? That's because the neurons in the head and the neurons in everybody's head in here is looking for blood. We have neurons in our head which subsist on the blood because they need oxygen and glycogen to exist, right? So we can now see why certain religions cut the throat of animals. We can see why religions use certain blood sacrifices because of their spirituality. In our spirituality, as far as African people is concerned, we use reason or the ability to think for ourselves. All right. Now, it's very tough to tell black people to go in a scientific direction, but that's where I come in and I bridge the gap between science and spirituality and show them that science and spirituality go hand in hand.